In today's episode of Today in World War II, a very important naval battle takes place in the Mediterranean called the Battle of Cape Matapan. Uh, Probably the most incredible commando raid in the history of World War II takes place in St Nazaire port. The Germans are now forced to withdraw from the Mareth Line in Tunisia to their last defense line in Tunisia before it all falls apart. The Red Army captures Nikolayev and they enter Romania. And finally, and I know I keep saying this, but I have to educate us on how this works. But in Yugoslavia, a horrible massacre takes place. Let's get started. All right, so on March 28th, 1941, about 150 miles off of Cape Matapan, Greece, a huge naval battle took place, the Battle of Cape Matapan. And this was a situation where the Italians had found that there was a group of four Allied cruisers that were in the area. So they sent out three Italian cruisers to attack. Then after that, they added some battleships into this whole situation. So you've got four Allied cruisers that are now being attacked by three Italian cruisers and a couple of battleships. So all the cruisers were a little bit damaged. Now, and the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, they sent out their swordfish torpedo planes, and calling them planes was almost a joke. They were biplanes. They were relics from World War II, or excuse me, World War One, but they did manage. They always fought higher than their weight, the swordfish torpedo planes in World War II, and they were able to put a torpedo into the Italian battleship Vittorio Veneto, and it took it out of action. And causing one battleship to leave at the cost of one swordfish plane was just an amazing return on investment, if you want to call it that. And so then, after this, once it was dark, the Royal Navy sent in their battleships, Barham and Valiant and Warspite, and they came in undetected and they sank a lot of cruisers. Okay, they would the war would end. Excuse me, the war. I'm sorry. The battle would end with the Italians losing five warships. You know how many the Brits lost? Three people. That was it. The air crew of the torpedo bomber. Talk about a one-sided victory. The Royal Navy really had their day today. Speaking of having their day, on March 28th, 1942, Operation Chariot took place. And I want to tell you that as somebody who loves a good commando raid and loves to I read those all the time and they're fascinating. They decided that they wanted to knock out the St. Nazaire port, dry dock, because they felt if they did that, that would remove St. Nazaire as a possible repair place for German capital ships. So they came up with this ingenious plan. It was audacious and they took a lot of losses and they knew they were going to. But what they did was they took a destroyer, an old destroyer, and they packed it full of explosives. And it was a situation where they were going to send that destroyer up into Saint Nazaire, which you had to go into the river a while to get to the actual dry dock. It wasn't like right on the seashore. So you had to brave all of this artillery fire and machine guns to get there. So they had commandos on this ship. They also had commandos who were attacking in smaller boats at the same time. You had you had different commandos doing different things, but the whole idea was to clear as much as they could, clear out as much of the German incoming fire to allow the HMS Campbellton, the destroyer, to ram itself into the dry dock. So that's what happened. About 1 in the morning, the Campbellton was able to get through. That it was not destroyed by incoming fire, rammed the dock, and they set timers on the destroyer, so it would not blow up right away. So the commandos who survived on the Campbellton, they had their own targets to to attack and place explosives. Well, what's interesting about this was that the commandos did the best they could. They suffered a lot of casualties. I think like 169 commandos were killed, 215 captured. Uh, about 228 of them did manage to escape. I believe that there was a huge manhunt inside St Nazaire, outside the port, and I think that three of them, don't quote me on that, but I think a few, let's just say a few, were able to. They did manage to get to Spain, which, if you look at geography, whoo, that was quite in full battle dress and their uniforms. They were able to cross enemy territory, that long of enemy territory, to get to Spain. That was pretty impressive as well. Well, the what was interesting is that there was the delay in the destroyer's explosives going off, and so a lot of the German officers, their wives, their mistresses, a lot of Germans basically went on the Campbellton and were checking this stuff out, and it wasn't safe. And the commandos, I read about this later, the commandos that were still like being held prisoner, and they were, in basements, and being held by, with submachine gun carrying German soldiers. They were like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. It's going to happen. And then all of a sudden it happened. And the whole thing blew up. The dry dock door, the gate, flew up in the air and was project. It was like a projectile for like 100 yards. That's how powerful the explosion was. And of course, all those Germans were on the boat. I mean, they talked about, survivors talked about how the harbor was like it was a rainstorm, a monsoon of body parts. Ugh, can you imagine that scene? Anyway, wow, what an amazing raid by the British. Just, you know, awesome. On March 28th, 1943, the most Axis troops had to evacuate from the Mareth Line in southern Tunisia. There was just too much pressure. Like I've said, my personal opinion of Montgomery was that he was a plotter, Plodder. He always had his set pieces. He was not a lightning strike general, let's put it that way. But again, he had the advantage of logistics. He had the more he had an unlimited supply of troops, supplies, and you knock out 20 tanks, and the U.S. is going to supply them with 50 more. So it was something that the Germans just could not. They could hold on for a while, but it, the Allies took a lot of casualties because of this. But it was no way they were going to be able to hold Tunisia. The odds were just too much against them. So this is what was happening. So it was just the attrition. That's why we won the war. On March 28th, 1944, Red Army units captured Nikolayev. Now, this is the southwest flank of the Soviet attack against, pushing the Germans back into Berlin. So this is a very important moment for them on the Eastern Front, because they were now pushing into the Balkans, into Romania. So they're going to sweep into Bulgaria, Romania, and then eventually up to Yugoslavia, Hungary. That's going to be a left hook that's coming up from the south, and they're going to meet their other pincers in Berlin. But this is in 44, so there's about a year to go before that happens. But they got, they're it's getting dicey for the Germans, and rightly so. And finally, on March 28th, 1944, a horrific massacre takes place in Yugoslavia. Of course, it's the SS Volunteer Division, Prince Eugen. They overran the Dalmatian villages of Dorfer, Atok, Korny, Ruda, Dolak, and they carried out just what is horrific barbarism. In a single day, they massacred about 834 men, women, and children. They drove them into one place. They gathered everybody there into one place from those villages, and they opened fire on them with machine guns. They threw bombs among the survivors. They robbed the victims of their possessions. Afterwards, they burnt the corpses. They also burnt down 500 houses and plundered everything that could be looted. This, my friends, again, is what happens when you give you give your country over to an authoritarian regime. Sooner or later, the barbarism comes. So thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it, and I will see you tomorrow.